Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Disaster. This is Battlefield 1. In today's CTE update video, we're going to be covering all the new content from the They Shall Not Pass upcoming DLC currently being trialed on the CTE for testing. Now, we're not going to be covering the more fundamental game changes that are going to be introduced alongside this patch for all Battlefield players. Things like changes to grenade spam, grenade resupplies, changes to AA cannons, as well as some major changes to certain weapons. Those I'm going to cover in a separate video later today, so feel free to check that out if you're interested in that. In today's video, we're going to truly focus on all the new content that we've been able to try out on the very much buggy CTE. Speaking then of that new content, let's get straight into it, starting off with the maps that we've been able to try out. Now, some people were able to try out 2 or maybe even 3 maps. I, for my part, was only able to get hold of Soissons simply because a number of server joining issues cropped up yesterday and today. For a matter of fact, as of making this video, once more, no servers are actually visible in the CTE to join, which means nobody can actually join any servers once. DICE has had a hard time, technically speaking, regarding this current CTE update, which is of course forgivable given that it is the CTE. With my experiences, however, on Soissons, I can tell you I like the direction DICE is taking. Soissons is very much a more cover-centric map. It's a smaller map as well. Now, what I mean by this is, think back to the days of Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4, and some of the maps that you as infantry player enjoyed the most. Usually those had a number of cover, not too many open spaces between objectives, and it was relatively easy to move around the map. This is essentially what Soissons is, at least in my experience. It's very easy to get from objective to objective without necessarily always getting sniped. At least this comparatively to some of the other maps that we've had up to now in Battlefield 1. Now, Soissons is, on the other hand, however, very armor focused. Not necessarily sniper focused, but armor focused. Each side starts off every round, at least on Conquest, with 4 tanks. Not 2 on each side, 4 per side, which means there's a total of 8 armored vehicles on the battlefield as soon as the round begins. Now, that leads to a massive tank battle, which is actually quite enjoyable. Once this initial tank battle has then run its course, you won't necessarily find that many armored vehicles all the time on the battlefield, but there will from each team be a constant stream of armor that will spawn, and necessarily there's going to be much more infantry versus tank and tank versus tank battles on these maps. Especially, you can expect, at least as infantry, when pushing up onto an enemy objective, there's a good chance that there's 1 or 2 armored vehicles that you will face. However, DICE has, in my opinion, done a good job regarding map balance to accommodate this higher number of vehicles, and it comes down to a number of factors I've already mentioned. First and foremost, the cover and the fact that the map has a varying number of heights and elevations, which means that you're not always in sight of the rest of the map. With the exception of really if you stand on top of the hill, from which you can see more or less the entire map, you're usually hidden from most of the enemy team, unless of course they're right in front of you. What I'm trying to say is it's not as easy to traverse this map with a tank as you may think, and unlike something like File Fortress, where a tank can essentially shoot over the entirety of the map, most times enemy vehicles won't actually be in sight of you. However, it also means you're less likely to constantly be battling against armored vehicles. Speaking of armored vehicles, let's talk about the new tank, and I already apologize now for my butchering of any French in today's video. Namely, of course, first, the new name of the tank, the Saint-Chamond, I can't really pronounce that, is of course the new tank we're getting with this DLC, and it's an interesting one. It's currently still difficult to actually say whether or not it's on par with the heavy, if it's more on par with the land ship regarding armor and damage output, or where exactly it sits in between. However, time will tell where exactly this tank fits in, how much armor it truly has. It's certainly on the heavier end, however, it does good damage and it's got good armor. It's got a maximum, I believe, of 5 or 6 seats, depending on the variant. However, what truly makes this tank so interesting and so enjoyable, at least for me to use or to see introduced into the game, is the very clear differentiation between the 3 variants and the clearly different special abilities they have. Very interesting special abilities, many of them unique to this new tank. Starting off then with the Field Assault tank. Now, this tank is essentially the basic tank for the Field Assault group, and it comes with an auto repair, I believe, but most interestingly with an artillery strike option. Now, this can't be aimed necessarily, but you activate it, your tank then stands still for a quick time, and around you artillery shells will try and kill anything that's there. Now, does that mean that you basically can run into the enemy's base and just start killing everybody with this ability? No, it's going to be difficult to actually use this successfully because of course it takes time for the artillery strike to come in. However, nevertheless, I can see this being a very interesting ability to use when pushing up to an objective full of enemy infantry or armor. Only time will tell how this actually plays out. Nevertheless, it's something unique to this tank. It's something interesting, and that's always good, seeing DICE is still putting quite a bit of creativity into its DLC design. Moving on to the gas assault tank, this does what you would expect it to do. It has the ability to shoot gas grenades. The last tank option, and this is arguably my favorite one, the standoff assault tank, has a number of special features. Not only does it not come with a secondary canister shell, but instead an LMG, much like the light howitzer tank does, which is great for dealing with both infantry and armor simultaneously or larger groups of infantry. It also comes with an interesting special ability, that namely of the bomber. For those of you who fly a bomber a lot, you will know you have the ability to essentially take a picture of everything you currently see, which spots all the enemies for a short period of time. This vehicle has the same ability to do so, which isn't necessarily too beneficial for the tank driver itself, but his gunners will be able to profit from it, and friendly pilots in the air should also be able to take advantage of these spotted targets. Moving on then to the new Behemoth, the Char 2C, the biggest and baddest tank now in Battlefield 1. It's a 5-seater Behemoth. It has quite a bit of health. Thankfully, it's fully mobile, so much like the airship, you can freely move it around the map as long as you don't get it stuck somewhere silly. Regarding getting the tank stuck, that's probably easily done on Soissons because of the number of trenches and other hindrances that you can probably get this tank wedged in. For a matter of fact, I managed to get the Saint-Chamond wedged pretty much 2 rounds into playing this map. Good job on my part. I am an excellent tank driver, I know. However, regarding the Char 2C, one interesting thing I'd like to mention is it's essentially waterproof. So you're not going to die or get the tank or destroy the Behemoth if you drive it into a shallow river, unlike other tanks which you can easily destroy in that way. Which is good because I was already in one of the tanks with the driver silly enough to try that out and basically drive into a body of water. This tank is not a submarine, so you're not going to be able to shoot your LMGs or guns if it's underwater. Moving on then to some of the more mechanics regarding the Char 2C. Sadly, it's very much driver focused. Now, what I mean by this essentially is the driver not only gets, of course, access to moving the tank, but also to its main weapon, its beastly primary shot that basically can two-shot any armored vehicle in the game. Powerful and every enemy tank driver's worst nightmare. I saw this thing take 70 damage out of an assault tank, which is similarly heavily armored to that of the heavy tank, arguably not quite as heavy, but close enough for me to basically conclude that you can easily two-shot a heavy tank with this tank. In my opinion, the best way to take this tank out is going to be through the heavy bombing that a bomber can supply, which can truly do quite a bit of damage against an armored target, as well as just spam firing assault gadget that essentially. In the end, it is a tank, and as such, very susceptible to things like anti-tank grenades or the anti-tank rifle. Having talked a little bit then about the Char 2C, let's move on to the DLC weaponry that we've got with this patch. And I once more apologize for the butchering of some of the French upcoming. First and foremost, for the assault class, we've got a new shotgun. The Shotgun Inertial Shotgun fires at 164 rounds per minute, should be somewhat similar to the 12G that we've got now in the way it's used, basically spam fire in close quarter. Not too much is known about the shotgun up to now. It does have 5 rounds to shoot, so there's nothing special there. I'd like to mention regarding these new weapons, they're going to be unlocked in a different mechanic to what they were previously up to now in Battlefield 1. You're not going to be using war bonds to unlock these new weapons. For a matter of fact, you're going to essentially have to complete assignments, unlock requirements to get these weapons. So complete so many kills in a round or in total with this and this weapon. And by the way, these assignments differ for the different variants of the weapons. So if you use a trench versus factory, the unlock requirements are going to be different, so it should take you a few hours at least to get the DLC weaponry unlocked once the DLC goes live. Moving on then to the second assault weapon. This is of course an SMG, the Ribeyrolles 1918, similar to the MP18 at least at initial glance. It's got a rate of fire at 550 rounds per minute. It's got a 25 round magazine. However, unlike the MP18, it's going to be less focused on hip firing or aggressive play, more on holding the line, at least for the assault class. It's going to come with a bipod and it's less accurate on the move than the MP18, so it's going to be interesting to see how this gun truly works out in practice. The Lebel model 1886 is a new sniper rifle for the scout class, fires at 56 rounds per minute, has 8 shots to go through, so one of the larger magazine sizes for sniper rifles in Battlefield 1, and supposedly is somewhat similar to the SMLE in Russian, or a combination of the two. I haven't got my hands on the gun just yet, sadly, but essentially it's not quite as close quarter as the SMLE, but not quite as medium long range as the Russian. The support class gets the Shosha LMG, which is a higher damaging LMG, the first of them, which means it of course performs a 4-shot kill on your enemy. This comes at the cost of fire rate, of course. At 360 rounds per minute, this gun is not going to be doing too much damage out, and it also has a small magazine size with only 20 rounds to go through. Interesting once more to see how this gun turns out to actually perform in practice in combat. Last but not least, for the medic class, the RSC 1917, arguably one of the most interesting additions in the weapon department in this DLC. This is actually going to be a 2-shot close quarter DMR. That means it's going to be able to 2-shot your enemy if you hit them in the chest twice at certain ranges. However, as a consequence of this, of course, it's not going to be firing very quickly at 164 rounds per minute. Its damage output is, of course, limited, and with only 6 shots to go through, a magazine size of 6, once more, you're not going to be able to down the entire enemy team. It, of course, has to be balanced. Apparently, this gun also has very good accuracy and very low recoil, so it's going to be more of a very sniper-dedicated medic rifle, or more of the aggressive close quarter against 1 or 2 targets. We have to yet wait and see how it plays out. I, for my part, very much like what I've been able to see here regarding especially weapon and tank design. It looks like DICE has gotten a little bit more creative regarding the weapons and kind of designed some more specialized weapons, some weapons very special, strong characteristics, which are good in certain situations. One could argue one would like some more weapons that are more flexible in application, but I much prefer weapons that are special and different than simply just producing another MP18 or another Hellriegel or another weapon that we already have. Now, let me know down below in the comments what you think about the first impressions, the first information we've gotten regarding the upcoming DLC now that we've been able to try it out in the CTE. Have you yourself been able to try it out in the CTE, and what have your experiences been? If you'd like to know about the changes regarding more the fundamental game mechanics that are currently being trialed in the CTE, feel free to check out my second video coming up just later today. I'll talk about the changes to the AA cannon and the way it interacts with fighter and attack planes, as well as, of course, the changes to resupplying of grenades and the way grenades act themselves, and some major weapon changes to certain weapons. With all that being said, however, I'd like to thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next Battlefield 1 video.